Well, in what seems to be another instance of political oppression, former British MP George Galloway was detained at a London airport under the UK's Terrorism Act. Now, this occurred as he was arriving from Abu Dhabi following a trip from Russia. Now, his party said that although he was ultimately released without charge, the incident was, and I'm quoting here, a clear act of political intimidation by the British state, targeting a person just for their views.
Our party condemns the attempt to intimidate those who seek amity rather than enmity with the rest of the world. Our leader, George Galloway, and our deputy chair, Gayatri Galloway, have now been released without charge. There was never any chance of an offense. We were obstructed from providing legal support, and the conduct of the affair has been designed to intimidate political opponents of the drive towards war with Russia and China.
Well, the authorities confirmed that the 71-year-old former MP and his wife were temporarily detained by counter-terrorism officers at Gatwick Airport. Now, they were released after being searched and interrogated. Galloway had visited Russia. This was to attend a forum for promoting opportunities for young adults in the central city of Nizhny Novgorod. Well, let's discuss this more now with Ranjeet Brar, who's the leader of the British Communist Party. Thanks for your time here on RT International. You heard there that the Workers' Party of Britain saying this was politically motivated intimidation by the British state. George Galloway being persecuted there for his views. First of all, do you agree with that assessment? And secondly, is this something that we're seeing as being a tactic that's used by the UK police now to essentially go on the fishing exercise against those people that it disagrees with?
Thanks. Yes, I think essentially yes and yes. I'm sorry to hear that George and Gayatri were detained. It's extremely inconvenient and intrusive. And I do think it is politically motivated with someone like George Galloway. How could it not be? I know George extremely well. He's a very charismatic politician and a national figure on the left. He's been elected as a member of parliament 7 times on 7 separate occasions in 5 different constituencies and for 3 different parties, one of which that he's currently the leader of, the Workers' Party, was an absolutely earth-shaking event in British politics just prior to the election of our current Labour administration and triggered Rishi Sunak actually to probably launch the election early to make sure that the pro-Palestine voices that were then coming to a focus around George Galloway and around the Workers' Party, in which I was involved in founding the Communist Party, together with George initially founded the Workers' Party, they were absolutely intent on sabotaging that as a political movement. We in Britain live in an intensely curated information and political space. It's the secret of the long-lasting rule of the Anglo-American imperialist class. And right now, of course, they are intent on waging their war, a genocidal war against the Palestinian people and the wider people of the Middle East to continue their control of oil. And of course, as you will be only too familiar, they're waging a genocidal war also in Ukraine, a war which is not just aimed at the Ukrainian people, where they have instigated a coup and essentially wrested their sovereignty from the Ukrainian people, but are using the Ukrainian people as a battering ram against Russia. And as they lose that war and they lose their grip, and as NATO falters and the US withdraws in our country, our government, a Labour Party government, which was traditionally thought of as being a left government, is doubling down on its narrative control. And it's going on these fishing expeditions really against anyone who breaks the official narrative, particularly if they have a reach. And as you will only be too well aware, George Galloway has a very large reach on social media, despite being effectively really a banned person in terms of the negative coverage that his party persistently receives. At the time Farage started his latest political journey, George Galloway was ahead of him. George Galloway and his political party, like the politics of my party, the Communist Party, are persistently suppressed, while those of racism, division, of pogroms and repression are promoted. And there's no question that this was, an attempt to stifle George, label him as some way beyond the pale, terroristic, and particularly to find out any connections between him and as they would see it, the Russian state, an enemy state, which they they declare they're not at war with, but every sign is they're behaving as if they are at war with Russia.
You talk there about the links with Russia, and of course, just a few days ago, George Galloway was participating in this youth festival assembly in Russia, and then he goes back to the UK via Abu Dhabi and is detained under the Terrorism Act. We know just a few months ago, one of our correspondents, Steve Sweeney, was also detained by the police in London, again, being asked questions about his connections with Russia working for RT. So, is it possible now that anybody arriving from Russia could be considered some potential terrorist in the UK in today's modern Britain?
There are contradictory signs, aren't there? On the one hand, there's talk of reopening direct air links with Belarus and thereby Russia, and US and Trump are making some show of trying to distance themselves from Europe's war against Russia. But of course, the US is the principal instigator. Ultimately, Anglo-American imperialism is the principal instigator of that conflict. RT was perhaps the most popular news show, particularly amongst those who sought real truth, an alternative analysis, information which is so tightly curated on our mainstream media, and of course was famously banned 2 years ago with the beginning of the special military operation. All of the narrative in our country runs that Russia is the aggressor, when it's really quite clear that Anglo-American imperialism, our own country, is the aggressor. So yes, anyone who has links with Russia currently is being targeted. You can see that, or just paints a picture which looks at the real history of the Ukraine war. So I think, the control of the information space, the increasing repression in British society. We've seen Keir Starmer talk about the introduction of ID cards. We've seen the repression of doctors like myself, in fact, who are selling books or material or promoting a view online which challenges their narrative about Israel, and in particular calls out Israeli Zionism as a genocidal force backed by Anglo-American imperialism in the Middle East. So, increasing levels of repression in Britain, and particular targeting of those who go against the key points, the key wars abroad and process of domestic repression at home. And George has been, one of the prominent voices speaking out against that narrative.
Well, I'm very sorry we are out of time. I could speak to you for much longer on this, but thank you for your thoughts on that. That's Ranjeet Brar, who's a leader of the British Communist Party.
Thank you.